You never really notice the silence of a city until it swallows someone whole. Streets that once seemed ordinary, lights that once glowed with familiarity, suddenly take on a different weight when someone vanishes into their shadows. And in 2014, in a mid-sized American city where people prided themselves on knowing each other's business, Eleanor Vale disappeared without a trace. But this isn't just a story of someone who went missing. It's about the scars people carry, the choices they bury, and the darkness that can live behind the cleanest of smiles. Eleanor Vale was 32 years old when she vanished. A paralegal by trade, she worked long hours at a law firm downtown, usually the first one in and the last one out. Colleagues described her as efficient and meticulous, but not many went further than that. Eleanor wasn't unfriendly, but she kept a certain distance, as though she had erected invisible glass walls between herself and the world. That didn't mean she was entirely isolated. She had a younger sister, Cassandra, who adored her and who lived just a few neighborhoods away. Eleanor also had a circle of acquaintances, people she chatted with at the corner coffee shop, the dry cleaners, and the yoga studio she went to religiously every Thursday evening. People noticed her presence, even if she never allowed herself to be the center of attention. What people didn't know was that Eleanor lived with secrets. On the night of her disappearance, March 27th, it was raining. Not a heavy storm, but a cold, relentless drizzle that slicked the streets and blurred the glow of traffic lights. Eleanor had left the law firm around 9:30 p.m., later than usual. Surveillance cameras captured her locking up her office, adjusting her coat, and heading toward the parking garage across the street. She never made it home. When Cassandra called her the next morning and got no answer, she told herself it was fine. Maybe Eleanor had overslept. Maybe her phone had died. But by noon, when Eleanor failed to appear at work, something utterly out of character, Cassandra's worry hardened into dread. By evening, she had filed a missing person report. Detectives initially treated the case as routine. Adults vanish all the time. They reasoned, stress, burnout, voluntary disappearances. But Cassandra was insistent. My sister would never just leave, she told them. You don't understand. Eleanor was careful. She was predictable. If she's not here, something happened to her. The investigation began. The parking garage camera was the last confirmed sighting. Footage showed Eleanor entering at 9:41 p.m. She walked to the second floor, toward her sedan. The car never exited the garage that night. But here's the chilling part. Eleanor was never seen leaving either. The cameras were old, grainy, with blind spots. It was possible she had been taken in one of them. Detectives canvassed the area. A homeless man named Carl claimed he'd been sheltering near the garage that night. He remembered a woman in a gray coat hurrying across the street, but he also remembered a dark SUV idling at the curb. Windows were tinted, he said. Couldn't see the driver. But the way it sat there, engine humming, lights off, it didn't feel right. At first, police dismissed Carl's statement as unreliable. He had a history of mental health struggles, and his accounts often drifted. But later, Cassandra would return to his words again and again, haunted by the image of that silent SUV. As the search widened, investigators began peeling back Eleanor's life, and that's when things grew complicated. Eleanor was meticulous, yes, but she was also guarded. Her apartment was clean, almost unnervingly so, like a showroom rather than a home. No clutter, no personal photos except a framed picture of her and Cassandra as teenagers. But tucked inside a locked drawer in her nightstand, police found something unexpected, a burner phone. The phone had only a handful of contacts, all stored under cryptic initials. One number, labeled MQ, had exchanged dozens of messages with Eleanor in the weeks before her disappearance. Many of them were brief, almost coded, not safe to talk here. Tomorrow, same place. You can't let him find out. The discovery shifted the case from a missing person to something far darker. Who was MQ? And why was Eleanor hiding her conversations? Detective Marcus Quinn entered the story here. A seasoned investigator with a reputation for tenacity, Quinn was known for two things: his refusal to let go of a case and his ability to see through the masks people wore. When he read through the burner phone texts, his instincts sharpened. "This isn't random," he told Cassandra. "Your sister was involved in something she didn't want others to know about. And whatever it was, it may have cost her." Cassandra bristled. She didn't want Eleanor painted as someone leading a double life. But she also couldn't deny the unease creeping in. Had her sister been hiding something from her? 2 weeks passed with no major leads. Volunteers papered the city with flyers. Candlelight vigils were held. Cassandra appeared on local news, pleading for information. But Eleanor remained missing. Then, nearly a month later, an anonymous tip came in. A caller reported seeing a woman matching Eleanor's description entering a small diner on the outskirts of town 2 nights after her disappearance. The tip was vague, possibly unreliable. Still, Quinn followed it. And when he pulled the surveillance footage from the diner, his blood ran cold. The grainy black and white video showed a woman in a gray coat stepping inside. She looked disoriented, eyes darting as though she expected to be followed. She sat in a booth, clutching something in her hands, a folder, maybe, or a stack of papers. Moments later, a man entered and slid into the seat across from her. His face was partially obscured, but his build was broad, his posture commanding. The two argued, voices unheard, gestures sharp. Then, after just 7 minutes, the woman rose abruptly, leaving the folder on the table. She walked out into the night. The man stayed. He opened the folder, flipped through it, then tucked it under his arm and left in the opposite direction. The timestamp read 11:17 p.m., 2 days after Eleanor was last seen in the parking garage. It wasn't just a disappearance anymore. It was a conspiracy. The discovery electrified Cassandra. If Eleanor had been alive 2 days later, it meant she wasn't abducted immediately. She had been moving, hiding, meeting someone. But why? Quinn froze the footage, staring at the blurred face of the man across from her. Something about the jawline nagged at him. He sent the stills to facial recognition, but the results were inconclusive. Still, he wasn't starting from scratch. He had the initials MQ from Eleanor's burner phone, and now he had a hunch that wasn't entirely rational. What if MQ wasn't a contact Eleanor was texting, but herself? The thought unsettled him. Why would she hide notes to herself on a burner? Unless, of course, it wasn't MQ at all. Unless those letters belonged to the man in the footage. Marcus Quinn. Quinn recoiled at the idea, even as it formed in his mind. But Cassandra noticed it too when she saw the texts. She pointed at the screen. MQ. That's you. Quinn shook his head. It can't be. I never knew your sister. Not before this case. But the possibility hung in the air like a storm cloud. If someone was using his initials, it meant one of two things. Either Eleanor had been planning to meet him, or someone wanted to frame him. And then came the twist that turned the investigation on its head. A set of fingerprints was recovered from the diner booth, lifted from a glass of water the man had used. When lab results came back, the name stunned everyone involved. Raymond Raines. Raines was no stranger to law enforcement. A former city official turned businessman, he had once been investigated for corruption, embezzlement, and ties to organized crime. None of it had ever stuck. His lawyers were too sharp, his connections too deep. But Quinn remembered him well. And the idea that Eleanor had been meeting Raines in secret, it raised more questions than it answered. Why would a quiet paralegal cross paths with a man like Raymond Raines? What was in that folder she left behind? And most chilling of all, if Raines had it, what had he done with her? The revelation fractured Cassandra's world. She wanted to believe her sister was still alive, but the evidence was pointing toward danger she could barely comprehend. Eleanor, her careful, predictable Eleanor, had been entangled with one of the city's most dangerous men. But Cassandra wasn't ready to give up. She began her own search, digging through Eleanor's old files, retracing her last weeks. And late one night, in a box at the back of Eleanor's closet, she found something extraordinary. A sealed envelope addressed to her, in Eleanor's handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting, no signature. Just 5 words scrawled across the page. If I vanish, find NZ. Cassandra stayed at the note, her pulse hammering. Who was NZ? A friend? A colleague? Another piece of the puzzle Eleanor had left behind. She folded the letter carefully, slid it back into its envelope, and whispered into the silence of her sister's empty apartment. "I'll find you. I swear I'll find you." And in that moment, Cassandra Vale stopped being a grieving sister. She became something else entirely, someone willing to step into the shadows Eleanor had left behind, no matter how deep they went. The story of Eleanor's disappearance wasn't over. But one thing was already clear. Truth was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. And for the first time, Cassandra realized Eleanor hadn't been running from someone. She'd been running towards something.